All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to the fire weather briefing for July 13th. Got myself, Jeremy in Spokane, and Matthew over in Seattle. So let's get into it. So, over the next 7 days, we have definitely the next 2 days, we have critical fire weather concerns across eastern Washington. And then as we go into the remainder of the week, those concerns will ease. And then as we head into next weekend, we are looking at the potential for some warm, dry, breezy conditions. Over North Idaho, there are low concerns. We are going to see some breezy to windy conditions as well as we go into especially late tomorrow and into Tuesday. But there's also the potential for some wetting rains out of some showers and thunderstorms. So that keeps the conditions low for our North Idaho areas. Now I'll pass it over to Matthew to talk about the west side.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so for today we have it marked as elevated here across western Washington, and really that's just another fairly warm and dry day across this part of the state. We'll see some afternoon breezes pick up, but given the relatively light wind speeds that are expected, as well as the current state of the fuels, especially in the lower elevations, and even some of the middle elevations of the Cascades, it's just kind of a marginally elevated type day, kind of a day to look out for, but not a high concern. The next period that we have highlighted here is the midweek period. That has been something we've been talking about for a couple of days here, with the return of the warm and dry conditions, likely seeing a development of the thermal trough setting up over the western part of the state and the Cascades, which may induce some light or probably light northeast or east winds at times that will help dry us out and also give us a little bit of extra concern. So those are the days we're really targeting here across the west side, but we'll get into the details as we go, but those are the days we want to highlight for now. Thanks.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's take a closer look at today. So for today, the areas that are highlighted in red here is where we have a red flag warning out for critical conditions due to the dry and breezy winds. We're looking at sustained winds out of the west, 10 to 20 with gusts up to 30, with relative humidities getting down to between 15 and 25%. And it's also going to be very warm with high temperatures getting up into the upper 90s to low 100s. One thing of note is the red flag warning there in Chelan County. The main concern is for the eastern part of the county. As you get closer to the Cascade Crest, the relative humidities will be higher. Going into tomorrow, so yesterday we had elevated conditions, but we did increase that to critical over much of central and eastern Washington. We're going to be looking at a very strong cold front coming down out of the north. It's going to bring a substantial increase in winds down the Okanagan Valley, with winds locally gusting to 50 to 60 miles per hour. Elsewhere, we're going to be looking at gusts in the 35 to 45 mile per hour range. And with the cold front, the winds are going to be shifting around from the west to the north to northwest. So there may be a portion during the afternoon where the winds are more westerly over parts of eastern Washington, but then we'll see that wind shift with the cold front during the late afternoon and evening hours. So heads up on that. We'll also be looking at some elevated conditions across many areas outside of the areas with the critical conditions. All right, real quickly with the satellite image, we got the flat ridge over the area today, but a bit of an enhanced westerly flow, which is going to bring those gusty winds to central Washington. And here's that low way up there off the coast of northern British Columbia right now, but then it's that feature that's going to be dropping down over the next 48 hours or so. All right, so backing out of this, we'll go through the rest of the dashboard items. I'm going to skip the hazards because we got multiple hazards out on the map right now, and we highlighted those with the previous slides. So going into the weather for the next few days, wanted to highlight the today being the hottest day across eastern Washington, with a lot of areas getting up into the 90s, and then the warmest spots around the century mark. Then for minimum relative humidities, we're looking at minimum values getting down into the teens to mid 20s. And I'm going to be taking a closer look at North Idaho for the afternoon to see if we should lower those more, as there's been some recent indications that the minimum humidities may be just a little bit drier than what this map shows. Now I'll pass it over to the west side to talk about their side.
Yeah, really just wanted to add here that we're looking at another quite dry day across the west side too, especially away from the water as you get into areas south of Puget Sound down through Lewis County and then east into the Cascades, where we have those minimum RHs are down to about 30%. A couple spots could dip into the upper 20s. So that is the expectation for today. So certainly a kind of a bounce back. They didn't drop quite as low in all these spots yesterday, but definitely a drier day. And as those breezes pick up this afternoon, nothing too strong, which is good. But just that combination is something to keep an eye out for, especially for the grasses and the finer fuels today.
All right, thank you. And then here's the look at the detailed wind forecast, and you can see those west winds across central Washington with the gusts around 30, but through the Kittitas Valley, gusts could be even a little stronger in the low 40s. So even in that area, if there are any fire starts, that would definitely be a concern for fire spread with those winds. All right, moving on to tomorrow for Monday. For temperatures, we're going to be seeing a cool down, but still very warm across the east side with highs in the mid 80s to mid 90s. And then minimum relative humidity still fairly low in the uh, mainly in the 20 to 30% range. And then here comes the big shocker, will be the winds with those really strong gusts coming down the Okanagan Valley. We also do have a high wind watch out with gusts potentially getting up into the 60 to 65 range. It's also going to be fairly windy getting down onto the Waterville Plateau and towards parts of the Upper Columbia Basin and the Okanagan Highlands. And that's a big reason why the fire weather watch on the night shift was expanded eastward to include fire weather zone 699 for Monday. And then Monday evening, we're going to see a fairly strong push coming down into North Idaho. Some of the recent guidance suggests gusts could be as high as 50 miles per hour for Sandpoint. So that, again, will be another area that we'll be focusing in on. We may have to put out some additional headlines for those strong winds. So stay tuned for that. All right. And also wanted to show for tomorrow with that low coming down, there is the potential for some showers over far northeast Washington into the Idaho Panhandle, and any storms that develop would have a good chance for some wetting rains. And here is those chance for thunderstorms with the highest chances tomorrow over the North Idaho Panhandle. All right, moving on to day 3. So as we go into Tuesday, behind that, cold front temperatures will cool across the region, especially in the Idaho Panhandle with highs only in the 70s. But across the rest of the region, temperatures even on the west side are going to be in the 80s. And then looking at the minimum relative humidities, they will be a mixed bag across the state. Over eastern Washington, it's still going to be dry over central Washington, a bit higher over eastern Washington and North Idaho. And then I'll let Seattle talk about the west side there for Tuesday.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be significantly drier Tuesday than Monday, with that push being very strong across the west side, bringing that marine air in. So for Tuesday, we will see this downward trend commence, and that will be the first of, it looks like, about 3 days of quite low relative humidities during the daytime hours there. So we have about 30% for the areas from central Puget Sound south, and then east in the Cascades again. And then I wanted to use this as a representative sample for kind of the Tuesday, Wednesday time period. There may be some slight differences from day to day, which day ends up being the driest, but the trend should be Wednesday drier than Tuesday, and could be within about 5 or 10%, lower, depending on where you are on Wednesday and Thursday than on Tuesday afternoon here with what we're showing. But with these drier conditions, if we can go over to the wind, I wanted to illustrate here that we are seeing some indication of not a strong east component to the wind, but at least a notable easterly component to the wind that in combination that will help dry us out more depending on where that thermal trough nudges up and where that east component to the wind sets up. We could see some areas drop even lower into the 20s, approaching our critical thresholds, and that would dry us out more significantly. So that is where we're really trying to get a close eye on the current state of fuels and also where this thermal trough may develop and set up, because whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, we are looking at that time period where we could also see the extra enhanced instability coming into play, and that would kind of take two of our red flag potential criteria items. So we're going to be looking at this very closely. This is probably looking at this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday period for the west side, maybe our biggest event so far this year. So something we're taking a close eye on in the next several days. And for any of our partners that are on the call as we get to the end, if you have input or insight into the state of things, we'd love to hear from you at the end of the call today too.
All right, thanks, Matthew. And yeah, I wanted to highlight those northeast winds across eastern Washington as well. Just mainly, it's another directional change. So we're going from west winds today, the northwest winds tomorrow, to northeast winds on Tuesday. So definitely going to be seeing those winds shifting around. Also wanted to highlight the just the chance of wetting rain. Again, over far northeast Washington into the Idaho Panhandle as we go into Tuesday. This will mainly be for the overnight hours into Tuesday morning. And then that's just a chance for thunderstorms. By the time we get to the Tuesday timeframe, it does look like the better potential for thunderstorms will be shifting east of the region. For QPF, the chances for wetting rain will be highest up along the Canadian border of Fire Weather Zone 700 and over the northern part of Zone 101. Otherwise, we're not expecting any precipitation across much of central and eastern Washington. All right, going to the trends, I'll pass it back over to Matthew to talk about Enumclaw.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So yeah, we went with Enumclaw today, trying to pick a more representative spot to help capture some of the trends with the wind as we get into the midweek period. So starting today is definitely a hot day, and we'll see those min-RHs dip down and into about 30% range in this area. The big push of marine air, the cool down, will definitely commence on Monday. But by Tuesday, that's when we see that high pressure return. Looking at those min-RHs, we see them not getting terribly low initially on Tuesday, down to maybe that 35% range with a lower dip the subsequent day there on Wednesday. But those 2 days, we looking at the wind trace, we do see that yellow, the kind of the diurnal pattern where the winds pick up in the afternoon and evening hours. And the direction comes into play here too, both Tuesday and perhaps at least Wednesday, seeing that easterly component noted here in Enumclaw. Places like the Fire Training Academy will probably see a similar easterly component, and that can really push those RHs down even a little bit lower. So we'll be keeping a close eye on those days, as I mentioned before. And then as we get later in the week, I just wanted to quickly say that, the overall trends maybe for a slight cool down here on the west side as the onshore flow perhaps increases, but the spread, the uncertainty is still quite large. So if we do start to see the potential for critical conditions at least one day or so towards midweek, we may still stay elevated for a couple of days if that cool down and the increased humidity doesn't quite come in and we end up on the drier side of things, even late in the week into the weekend. That's all I had to say here. Thanks.
All right, thanks. For Eastern Washington, I'm going to pick Kettle Falls as the point, given the closer proximity to the Hope Fire, and really wanted to highlight the big increase in winds. These are winds getting up around 25 miles per hour with the cold front, and with higher gusts around 40, with the cold front coming in late tomorrow out of the north. In those humidities around that time are going to be around 25 to 30%. So still fairly low relative humidities, but there is, given all the precipitation north of the border, that wind shift is going to bring an increase in relative humidity. So the good news is we're looking at very high, great recoveries for Monday night. And then temperatures will be cooler on Tuesday behind that front before we see the gradual warming and drying trend as we go through the rest of the week. And then over North Idaho, we'll pick Bonner's Ferry again, given that's where the bulk of the precipitation chances are going to be. Also, a pretty significant wind increase there for Monday evening with that front, but also we'll see those relative humidities coming up substantially and the temperatures dropping a lot as we go into Tuesday before the warming trend for the rest of the week. All right, going to end here with the 8 to 14 day outlook, highlighting increased odds for above normal temperatures and about normal precipitation as we head into next week. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording